So you hear that I'm now recording, and today, because this is going to be a rather long webinar and it's going to cover a lot of information, I wanted to start by sharing with you information on what I'm going to cover all the way through it and why. And to help me do that, I created this PowerPoint, and I'm going to try and share it with you this way as I record. So I'm going to go to this document right here, and I'm going to open. And somebody is asking to join, so I will admit this person.
Emily Chesterlight, I found two, and I found six.
I see, I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves. If you're not muted already, please make sure that you're muted so that we can preserve a good recording. And that way, if you want to watch this later, it'll be more effective. So today, this is what I'm going to go through on this webinar to start today. I'm going to talk about what happens in prison with rumors and how do you respond to them. Then I'm going to go to this next slide, and we're going to talk about the First Step Act. And I'm going to explain to you why this is such a complicated tool and what you can do to take advantage of it. But really, you have to understand it, and it's not easy to understand. Then we're going to get into this section where we talk about a historical perspective of the Bureau of Prisons and what has happened like in that agency over the past 40 years. We're also going to talk about how people complain about this system. You know, there's nothing we can do to change the past, but what we can do is if we understand it and understand how other leaders are working through it, we can make a better approach to navigate our way through complex waters. We're going to talk about the bureaucracy some more during this video. We're going to talk about mechanisms for relief when things aren't going your way in the Bureau of Prisons. And then I'm going to provide you with some examples that I think respond to that first message of rumor mills, because the rumor mills is really what prompted this webinar. So, and then at the end of it, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing I've asked people to do at every webinar, and that's to go into this system with a CEO mindset, understanding you are going to be responsible for navigating your way through complex matters. And to do that, you really need to plan, you need to prioritize, you need to develop your tools, tactics, and resources, and you need to execute.
Oh, no, he's done. He's not with you.
So
are you done?
I'm muting there, making sure everybody's muted. And so now that's what I wanted to share to start. So you can see this is going to be a rather long webinar. And the reason we started this webinar, this particular webinar, is because something happened in prisons across America that, and the federal system across America, that resulted in our team receiving scores of emails from people who are in prison. And those emails, I'm going to show you what they started from this article right here that caused a lot of concern. It says that and this article is coming from a guy who served some time in prison. He is a former lawyer, and he does a service, and that service is to try and help people, you know, understand various aspects about the prison system. So he creates this newsletter and he sends it out to people in federal prison. And sometimes this newsletter has headlines that make sense to somebody who's familiar with the Bureau of Prisons, but to somebody who is in the Bureau of Prisons and they see a headline like this that says, BOP says that for now, some prisoners are too short to be made any shorter. Well, when we're writing, we can always kind of influence the messaging of what we're going to say. In prison, a headline like that causes a lot of anxiety to people in prison, because you're really in a total bureaucracy, meaning they control, the system controls every aspect of your life. It controls what you eat, where you sleep, what you wear, what you read, who you interact with, your connections with family. It influences so much of your life that you're just grasping for news. And you're grasping for news that you could use, because what you want to do is you want to come home. And anytime you read something that the system is doing something to you, it could put you like in a tailspin. And that's what happened this week. People got that newsletter, I think last Monday, and we started getting, scores of emails asking us, is this true? Are they going to stop issuing Earntime credits? Or are they going to not apply Earntime credits to me the way that I should be earning them? Or is the CARES Act going to stop? And, the people that are asking those questions, I understand, they sometimes forget what we talk about on these webinars. And that's that the system is really a complicated environment that deals with historical things that have already happened, right? A federal judge has already sentenced somebody. All of you, if I am to ask, I'm going to ask Sam to unmute himself. Sam,
Yeah.
unmute yourself. So when you first started, you hired an attorney. What were your expectations?
Oh, I was going to go to trial.
No, when you first heard that you were going to be charged, what did you think? When you first heard you were going to be charged, did you think, why am I being charged? What were your thoughts?
I was arrested. As soon as they came to my front door, 17 men and women wearing flak jackets, I thought, you have to have the wrong door. Maybe you want the house next to us.
Okay. And then tell us very quickly, if you could, just that process, because I think everybody on this webinar goes through that same process. What your process from the time you're dealing with a lawyer to what you did.
Absolute denial. This can't be happening to me. Do you have the wrong person? To talk to my attorney, who, yes, we're absolutely going to go to trial, pay me a set sum of money to go to trial. To him calling me a couple months later saying, no, you can't go to trial. You got to accept the plea. Telling me I'm getting probation. Don't worry, everything's fine. Home confinement.
Just a lot of disappointment along the way.
At each step.
And that's what I want everybody here to remember, because I'm imagining that's something that's happened to everyone. None of you see yourself as a criminal. None of you see yourself as the government should be targeting you, but all of these things happen. Your lawyer may have told you one thing and something else may have happened. You may have not expected the prosecutor to do something and the prosecutor did something. Then you went into the system and the judge may have given you a sentence already. And now you're saying, how did I get here? Well, as somebody who went through it for a quarter century, I'm here to give you a mixed bag of news. The news is the disappointment's not going to stop. It's going to continuously to be a challenge, and we cannot change that. What we can do is show you how to navigate your way through that challenge to take advantage of every opportunity that will help yourself. And so when I see a message, and I don't, say one thing bad or good about that message that came out from the newsletter that went into prison, I'll say that it can cause people a lot of anxiety. And the only way that I know how to overcome anxiety is to have a plan and to say, I am going to deal with this plan. And my hopes that in this message, a takeaway for you is to understand there are going to be a series of challenges that come, and many of these challenges come because of this right here, because of this massive legislation that passed in 2018 called the First Step Act. This is just a piece of legislation that Congress passed. It makes it a law. The president signed this bill into law in 2018, but it is a major piece of prison reform legislation. And as a major piece of prison reform legislation, it's going to affect everybody that's in prison, and everybody should understand, okay, what were the real changes in this law, and how is it going to affect my life? Well, one of those big changes is it mandated the Bureau of Prisons to completely transform the way it trains its staff. In the past, when I served my sentence, and ever since I can say from 1980, the mid 1980s until 2018, the mandate in the Bureau of Prisons was to not think anything about your life when you get out. It's about keeping you in prison for the duration of your sentence, and mechanisms did not exist for you to change anything. But that's not the case anymore. Now, there are opportunities for people in prison to work toward getting themselves out. And you may have heard, if you've spoken with Sam, you may know about the CARES Act. But the CARES Act is very different from the First Step Act. The CARES Act is not a law like the First Step Act is a law. To change the First Step Act will require an act of Congress, but the CARES Act can change next week, okay? And people are very anxious about that as well, because the CARES Act has provisions that allow a person to get out after they've served, in some cases, 25% of their sentences. And that would be awesome. I wish everybody would get that. But I don't know what the president of the United States is going to do. I don't know if he's ever going to take away the CARES Act. I don't think it's going to happen imminently. But I know that there's still a fight always with the Bureau of Prisons, because the Bureau of Prisons is in a state of transition right now. They have to train all 36,000 people to think differently. And this is going to take years of advocacy and litigation. And these are not my words. I want you to know they had to go through a lot of things already, such as develop the risk assessment tool, create this thing called a Spark tool that says, oh, we've measured your risk of recidivating, and now we've created these classes theoretically that are going to be in response to that risk. And then they have to create these computer models to measure whether you've gone through it. So it's a fundamentally different change than existed when I served my sentence. And it has resulted in a lot of problems. Those aren't my words. You know, we can look at, and I will show you what's happened historically over time and what's happening right now. The more you know about this, the more confident you are going to be when these rumors come into the prison. And they come all the time. They come all the time because you're living in prison, you're separated from the people you love, you're separated from the people who love you, and you want to go home, but you have to deal with this mechanism, because if you don't, you can derail prospects pretty easily. And I'm going to give you examples in this webinar of how that's happened to people. So, but first you really just have to understand theoretically what's coming. So when you see these red flags, you know how to respond. And you should respond as you are a CEO. You know problems are coming, but you've got solutions to deal with those problems, and you're confident that you're doing it in a methodical way. You're not going to latch on to every rumor that you hear in prison. You're not going to latch on to everything a prison staff member tells you, because a staff member may say one thing to you, but if you know where do you go to get the right information, then you can empower yourself to overcome it. Your lawyer's not going to be able to do this for you. Once you get sentenced, you're in the executive branch of government, and it requires a person to advocate for himself. Unfortunately, where do you go to get that information? Well, we're starting by giving you this information on these webinars, but while you're in prison, we will continue to give you information as I will be showing you here, okay? And I'm not pretending to say it's easy to understand everything. I can't show you everything I learned in 26 years of prison in an hour, but I think if you just listen to these webinars on iTunes or however you get your information, you are going to be more literate about how this system operates and how you can work towards the best outcome. But you've got to start from this historical perspective. Now I'm going to try and share, this other screen so you can kind of follow along as I'm kind of going through it. And these are the slides, but I just want you to see the slide here because I'm talking about this historical perspective of the Sentence Reform Act, right? That happened back in 1984, and it's resulted in what many of you guys know as the new guidelines. So when you got sentenced, or if you're going to get sentenced, the judge will use a series of sentencing guidelines. Well, it took 20 years of litigation for those guidelines to get to where they are today. Congress passed laws in 1984, it established the Sentencing Commission, it resulted in the abolition of parole. It was a major piece of reform. That's when I went into the system when that was happening. And just like today with the First Step Act, it took many years for this to evolve. Then there was the Prison Litigation Reform Act, which resulted in people not being able to file habeas corpus petitions. It resulted in this litigation called the Anti-Terrorism Death Penalty Act, which said, you only have a year to litigate certain things if they're doing something, if they're violating your constitutional rights. These are complex things for somebody who's not experienced the law, but I'm going to show you in this webinar how it applies to you. Other big reforms were the Comprehensive Crime Control Act, which resulted in this program called the Residential Drug Abuse Program, meaning people could administratively get out of prison earlier if they meet certain criteria. It resulted in litigation, or rather legislation known as the No Frills Prison Bill, which changed what was available to people in prison. It resulted in the Second Chance Act, these reforms, which happened in 2008, which extended the amount of time people could spend on home confinement or in a residential halfway house. And then there's this product that we talk about now, which is the First Step Act. So if you understand, like over the past 40 years, there's always been reforms, and there's going to continue to be reforms, but these reforms take a long time to unfold. There's this old analogy that I'm sure many of you have heard, that changing the government is like thinking of a big oil tanker in the middle of the ocean and getting it to change directions. It takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. But that's one of the reasons that I have frequently said on the webinar that if somebody has to go into prison, there's never been a better time than right now to be going into the federal system. And the reason that this is a better time than ever before is because the tanker is definitely turning, and it's turning towards the arc of justice, meaning it's easier now for people to advocate for themselves post-sentencing. These mechanisms did not exist when I was in prison, but I still had to navigate what existed then. All I'm telling you now is that it's slow. So when you're going to hear these rumors, like Lisa put out, that for somebody who doesn't have much knowledge of the system, it makes it look like, oh my God, this thing's going to be taken away from me. But the First Step Act is a law, and the Bureau of Prisons has to implement this law. And that law includes these things as earned time credits. And earned time credits are one mechanism that you can use to both advance your release date by 12 months, but even better than advancing your release date by 12 months, you can qualify to serve more of your sentence on home confinement, okay? These are big reforms, but the Bureau of Prisons is a huge bureaucracy, and it doesn't do things the way that we always want as a bureaucracy. You're familiar with bureaucracies like the Department of Motor Vehicles, but you've got to think of the prison system as the Department of Motor Vehicles times 100. I mean, it is driven by policies and procedures and the way that they train people, but that training doesn't always go quite the way people want. These aren't my words. You can look at leaders, like if I can go to Google Chrome here and share with you, some of the things that you'll find. You'll find information like this. The DOJ finds the Bureau of Prisons failed to apply earned time credits to 60,000 people. Headlines. That was back in 2021. Remember, this is relatively new stuff. You will see the senators, Dick Durbin and Grassley, who are the chairs of leaders of the judiciary committees in the Senate, writing to complain with letters like, Dear Attorney Garland, we respectfully request that you direct the Bureau of Prisons to expeditiously revise the proposed rule published on November 25th, 2020, regarding earned time credits authorized by the First Step Act. You will see Senate subcommittee hearings like this one, where they're saying the Bureau of Prisons is a failed and disgraced agency. It's the largest agency in the Department of Justice, but they're arguing, senators are arguing that the violations that they construe make it an embarrassment to the United States. And it's ongoing, all this information. You have the President of the United States doing a study right now, fact sheet, President Biden signs historic executive order to advance accountability and so on. And if you read this document, you will see what they have to do. They have to start improving and implementing First Step Act to do what? To get people out of prison who don't belong in prison in order to stop the spread of COVID, and to implement the First Step Act. And this is ongoing right now. So you've got the president forcing the attorney general to respond to the White House and saying, what is being done to advance these changes? Okay, that is a complicated matter. But that's why I say it's a good time, because by the time each of you are ready to qualify for these earned time credits, a lot of these problems will be fixed. But that's not going to stop you from being being in an environment where you hear a lot of people complaining and you hear a lot of people of what you're supposed to do. But the reality is that you've got to follow this process of how do I deal with these changes? How do I deal with what the system is doing? If it's not giving me my rights to earn time credits, what is supposed to happen? The first thing you have to have is some level of literacy of what's going on in the Bureau of Prisons. Because if you don't, you're going to be asking us to do something that we don't have the power to do. We cannot change the past, and we cannot change the fact that you're living inside of a bureaucracy. And how does that bureaucracy work? Well, it works in the same way as every bureaucracy. It does this. Let's see, Microsoft PowerPoint right here, right? You can see this thing. It has, when there's a big change going on, the Bureau of Prisons is going to form committees. They're going to form studies and suggestions and testings and training and policies. And then it's all going to go, they're going to publish their findings in this thing called the Federal Register. And you can see, what does that look like? Okay, well, it looks like this. You will see PDF I'm going to share here, right here. It'll be accurate. So you can see, here's a final rule of what the Bureau of Prisons says, how it's going to start implementing these first step time credits. This was published in January of 2022. And you could scroll through and say, after they've done all of their studies, and I'll have links to all of this in the thing that goes out tomorrow in the summary of all of this. So you don't have to take notes. I just want you to hear it so you understand what's happening. These are the rules that the Bureau of Prisons is supposed to follow. But again, think of that tanker that's turning in the ocean. It's very slow. And think about all of the challenges of a failed agency. You don't have to take my words for it. You can see right here, they're publishing what they're going to do, but Congress is continuously complaining about what they're doing. You'll see here, this is that letter from the United States senators writing to the Attorney General about how they're asking the Bureau of Prisons, hey, you guys are supposed to be exercising what Congress said we want you to do. Here's what Congress Jeffries had to say to the Bureau of Prisons, because it's what the Bureau of Prisons typically does. They try to do things their own way. Defining a day as 8 hours of participation does not appear to be a good faith attempt to honor congressional intent. Okay, they're saying that the Bureau of Prisons is telling us that it is not implementing the will of Congress. Well, when that happens, we have to know, what should we be doing? What are our mechanisms for relief? We have to expect the Bureau of Prisons will try to block us, because historically that was their mandate. Their mandate was to say, if a judge sentenced you to 34 months or 37 months or 12 months or 12 years, previously for the past 50 years, everybody in the Bureau of Prisons has said, that's the only thing we have to think about, keeping you locked up. And so their default response is to say, no, you've got nothing coming. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. That's, if you know that's what their system is like, you are going to know what are the mechanisms, how do I respond to that, right? How do I deal with that kind of problem? And the way you deal with it is you understand there are specific mechanisms that you could use to advocate for yourself. But you've got to stay methodical. You can't go off on a tangent and say, can we file this right away? Because if I file it right away, I might get out sooner. If you don't follow the methodical process of government, you're going to hurt yourself. And I'm going to give you real examples of how, I'm going to show you real examples in this webinar of how that has happened. So you always have to start right now, which is some of our previous webinars have discussed. You've got to start by saying, okay, I know I'm going to go into the system. I know I'm going to be dealing with bureaucrats who want to tell me no. I know that I want to make it easier for them. In order for me to make it easier for them, I have to have a release plan, and I have to be building this release plan over time. And I know that if I get blocked, and I hope you don't get blocked, right? I hope that the Bureau of Prisons is going to do what Congress told it to do. Here's what Congress told it to do under the CARES Act. If you've got a sentence of 18 months or less and you've served 25% of your time, you should be going to home confinement. You don't need us to do that if the Bureau of Prisons did what it said it was supposed to do. Okay, you could, the Bureau, what should theoretically happen is the Bureau says, oh, there's a mandate here from the Attorney General. They meet this criteria, send them to home confinement. Okay, but that's not what's happening. So we have to understand, okay, why isn't this happening? What can I do about it? Okay, if it's earned time credits and they're not applying those earned time credits appropriately, what is the appropriate response? The more I know, the more I move forward with my confidence intact, and I know what to do. So we have to understand these mechanisms, and we have to adhere to these mechanisms, because if we don't, we're going to make things harder for us. And I don't want things to be harder for you. And that's why I want to show you these things that I'll share with you right now. And these are real examples. And I'm going to show you where I got these real examples, because that's one thing I want you to know, right? I don't want to give you a series of rumors like with a headline that tells you, oh, the BOP is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's going to scare you and ask you to try and ring a bell or a magic wand to change things, because we can't do that. What we have to do is say, okay, I've got to look at real data, real information. And that's why I pulled these 3 cases that I'm going to go into depth with you now for the rest of this webinar. One of them is Dyer versus Fulgham. One is Marriott versus Bergami. And one of them is Stewart versus Snyder. And you're probably thinking, hold on, I didn't get involved in this program to go to law school. But I'm not giving you law school. I am giving you just some insight on why I am telling you, understand how the Bureau of Prisons operates, so you know what levers to pull while you're in there, and we can most effectively help you while you're in there. Because while you're in there, you won't get access to video webinars, okay? What you are going to get is information on us telling you, hey, here's what the papers look like that you should file, and here's how you should file them, and here's what you should expect to follow. But you have to follow the process, and you have to start building your own tools, tactics, and resources that are going to help you overcome at various stages of the journey. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get the type of information that could hurt you. And this is an example of one that will hurt you. I told you I was going to share information, show you how do I get this information for you to learn. So I'll share the screen again, and Adobe Acrobat. I'm going to share the screen, and this is where I go. I go to the court. This is a court website, where I can go in there and I can pull that case that I told you, Dyer versus Fulgham. You could see when it was filed, May of 21, and you could see what happened. This is a habeas petition under 2241. And what he's doing is he's asking the Bureau of Prison, a judge, to get involved right away and say, force the Bureau of Prisons to give me my earned time credits. You'll see that he filed this on his own. It says pro se. That's all that pro se means. You didn't have a lawyer, and you probably don't need a lawyer to do a lot of this work. It's just prison work. It's just helping you get what's coming to you from the prison system. So I went to the website because this guy in that article referenced this case, but I wanted to pull it. And here are all the documents. So if you scroll down, this section here, you can see the entire case. And if you see the entire case, I'm not going to pull the entire case because this one had a bad outcome. And the bad outcome occurred because of this information right here, right? Here is the summary of the case. And the summary of the case, if you scroll down, if I just scroll down here, what happened here? This guy tried to kind of ignore the mechanisms in place. And I'm just going to get down to the bottom of it where you'll kind of see the ruling from the judge. I think it's on page 6. It starts. But it says, as a preliminary matter, the court notes that there is uncertainty as to which earned time credit petitioner is or will be entitled to, and therefore the issues presented by the petitioner are not ones of purely statutory. That's not what I wanted you to see. Holding that as the BOP's. So he's writing here, it is the BOP's obligation, not the courts, to compute and apply sentencing credits. Okay, what happened? This guy chose not to go through the administrative remedy process, and he tried to instead file in court and ask the judge, hey, will you please force the Bureau of Prisons to compute my earned time credits? Well, because he chose to not go according to the mechanism that exists, he wasted his time. And this took 9 months to get through that, right? You file a motion in court and you ask the judge to do something for you. That takes a long time because here's what has to happen. You file a motion in court. The U.S. attorney gets an opportunity to respond to your motion in court. Then the judge schedules a set of hearings, but it's not his priority. And eventually when he issues a ruling, the ruling can come a month later, a week later, 3 months later. You could have been home by then if you went through the process correctly. Instead, he gets a decline from the judge and the guy has to start all over. When you're fighting this system, you've got to understand, I got to go through a methodical process. An administrative remedy is the mechanisms that the court authorized for somebody in prison to use if they've got a problem. You may not like this mechanism. But as Socrates told us, in a democracy, we don't have the right to make our own rules and laws. We've got to, change the law if we don't like it. So that's really what my job is here at the nonprofit, is to try and change the policies and change the system. But my role in speaking with each of you is trying to help you understand, okay, let's understand where we're going. And when it comes time to fight, let's launch our fight at the right time. Let's not do it like this guy Dyer, who tried to get ahead of things and bend the whole system to his world, because that's all that's going to work out is a failure. Now, let's show you a more methodical plan of how things are supposed to work. And so if I share my screen now, I will be able to show you a guy that went through the process appropriately, okay? This is this case here of a guy who's an executive who got sentenced to 29 months in prison, okay? And this is kind of what it starts. Probably all of you have something like this, right? There's a case that came out in 2020. This guy gets sentenced to 29 months. He goes into the prison system. He does everything that he's trying to do. But the Bureau of Prisons, as historically happens when major reform carries out, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So if we go to the docket sheet, again, we'll see that he filed this pro se, again, not complex litigation, okay? You can see all of the work that came down. Now, you don't have to worry about understanding all this. I will be sending it to people in prison because this happens all the time and it's important for you to know, okay? The court receives a petition, he sends a memorandum, the government then responds, right? It goes through this series of litigation. And in the follow-up, I will provide links so that you can read it for yourself if you want to, okay? What's more important is you understand, okay, what does it look like from the start to the finish? When you have a problem in prison, and you should expect, oh, I know where I'm going. There are going to be problems. I've got to know how to respond to those problems. This is the appropriate way that it all starts, okay? An appropriate way is this guy started by complaining with what's called an informal resolution, okay? And he just hand wrote it out. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be citing case law and all kinds of stuff like that. He just writes out, hey, Congress passed the First Step Act. I'm supposed to get earned time credits. The Bureau of Prisons not applying my earned time credits correctly. Please give me what I'm entitled to. Then you see that was filed on, does he have a date here? On October 11th, 2021. Okay. Well, the same day.
Hey, Michael, what's that called?
This is
What's that document called?
This is an informal request for a resolution. Okay. It's the start of the administrative remedy process. Okay. This is what it looks like. I just want you to see it. Okay. I want you to see it because I want to take away some of the fear. And I want to explain why, what do you mean there's fear? What happens? If you understand, hey, this is nothing that's complicated. It's not attacking anybody. It's your constitutional right. And I just want to, I'm glad, I don't know who asked me that question of what it's called, but I'm glad you did.
It's me. It's Glenn.
Pardon?
Glenn. It's Glenn, Michael.
Oh, hi, Glenn.
Hey.
So the reason I'm glad that Glenn asked that question is because there's this theory some of you may have read of. It's called the Stockholm Syndrome. Okay. And it was this theory, I think, that came back during the Kathy Hearst or Patricia Hearst kidnapping, where she started to identify with the people who kidnapped her and she became a bank robber too, right? And there's this theory that says when you go into this complicated environment, you want to identify with the staff and you want to say, oh, I'm not really a criminal. I'm not like all these people around me. And that very well may be true. But we got a case from a guy, a client. I don't do the personal stuff, our team does that, but I do get involved in responding to sometimes people through the Core Links email systems. And this poor fella, he's a non-criminogenic guy who's in prison for some white-collar crime, and he's serving a relatively short sentence. Certainly nothing short by his perspective. 1 day in prison's a long time, but he's in there, and his unit team is telling him, you've got nothing coming. Don't file this. You're not going to get it. And the guy's writing to us and he says, well, I don't want to upset them, and you can't go in there this way. You got to fight for your right to party, as the rock and roll song used to sing. You've got to understand there are mechanisms for you to advocate for yourself. And that mechanism is the informal resolution. You've got to formalize the process. If you don't do this, then the Bureau of Prisons is going to operate with you the way that it does with everybody else. But my job is to tell you there's a mechanism. That mechanism is what I am showing you right here. It's nothing to be intimidated about. It's just you saying, hey, I have this coming. Please give me my time. Congress authorized it. I'm entitled to it. And the Bureau of Prisons is going to respond as the way the Bureau of Prisons does. This is a response from the Bureau of Prisons. You notice at the end, they don't give him what he wants. Then they tell him, if you are dissatisfied with your response, you may submit a BP9. That is correct. That is a complaint. You have to complain, but you have to do it in the responsible way. The responsible way is to file this document, a request for administrative remedy. Nothing too complicated. In fact, if I stop sharing this screen and I take you to the website, which I've shared with you many times before, but I know it's like looking at the encyclopedia and you're saying, God, where do I find all this stuff? If I click the top here under resources and I go to advocacy news, okay, and I can scroll down here into this section here and you'll say administrative remedy process. What does it look like? Click that link, learn about it. This is the everything you need to know about administrative remedy. There's the program statement. You can click that. You can see it. Okay, I can see what, oh, there's the program statement. That's what it says. I can download what do the forms look like. I can get a PDF of this page if you want to read it. If you're in prison and you want us to send it to you, not a problem. Send us the information. We will send you this information so that you could read. What is the process? The more you know about the tools that are available to you, the more effectively you are going to be able to advocate through these challenging times, just like this guy did. This guy filed his BP-9, okay? And that's the administrative remedy process. We will help you, okay? You don't have to even do all of this on your own. We, as your team, and I want you to think of our team as part of your team, are going to help you deal with these challenges. So when the time comes that you have to file an administrative remedy, if it's for something that we can help you with, we will say, hey, this is the way that we would do it. We'll even, in many cases, prepare it and then send it to you so you know exactly what to do. But it starts with knowledge and understanding what's going to come. If it comes like this, you're going to get a response from the Bureau of Prisons. Here's the response, okay? And again, the Bureau of Prisons is very good at saying no. And then they're going to tell you, if you're dissatisfied, you've got to do this. File another one with the region. And that's what, then it looks like this. Here's what the regional response looks like on this guy's case. And you keep scrolling down. He doesn't get what's coming to him. He's got to fight again, right? This is the nature of advocacy. It's ongoing, but you have to do it within this process or you will get kicked out of the system and have to start all over. That's what a bureaucracy is. It's policies and forms, and the Bureau of Prisons will look for every opportunity to block you from going further because you didn't follow the process, okay? So it's very important to understand this process. And if I share with you real news like I'm doing right now, you should have a level of confidence that you can get through. After you've exhausted the administrative remedy process, then you can go to court. And when you're going to court, you don't have to be thinking that this is a terribly complicated thing, okay? It's not the same thing as when you were going through the criminal court. Oh, how many times? Glenn asked a question. Glenn asked me, how many times was he denied before he was approved? Well, in this case, he got out of prison before it resulted in a victory for him. And I'll get to that question, Glenn, at the end of this webinar. Again, it's one of the reasons I am telling you, if you have to go into the BOP, there's never been a better time than now. And I will be showing you that as we continue to scroll through this webinar, okay? The point that I want you to understand is that there was a process. It was it was informal request for resolution starting. It was then a BP-9, then it was a BP-10, then BP-11. So those are the four tools that judge said Dyer did not follow. He didn't go through that process. He tried to effectively skip to the head of the line. But a federal judge is going to say, I'm not a prison guard. I don't work for the prison system. Don't ask me to do these kind of decisions. That's what administrative remedy is about, okay? Our job is to help you understand that process, but also advocate for yourself in a way that you could avoid this process, okay? But if there's a problem, there's a response. Whatever they do, we know what to do, okay? It doesn't mean we can undo the past, but I know how I would have responded. And then during 26 years of prison, I can tell you I had to routinely advocate for myself, and it made a big difference. Just like this will make a difference in your life. But right now, you're kind of blind and you don't know. It's like you're going into a labyrinth and you say, where do I turn? Well, you know, I'm getting all this different information about what I should do or what I shouldn't do or what's going to happen, or a rumor came in that said they can't do this, or I should fight this way. It's methodical. So let's be methodical and deliberate and confident when we're facing these challenges. I have a question here. How often does the BOP update your release date according to Earntime credit? Cindy, that is a great question. And I will ask you to just be patient with me to get through the rest of this webinar, because I want to show you methodically. Why did I think it was so important for you to see the whole process? Okay. So I understand you want to know that, but what's existing today is not what's going to be existing in 3 months. Okay. And in 5 months. And so let's get there kind of methodically, but let's share the screen to kind of see that. So after this administrative remedy process is exhausted, then you can file in court. That's what this guy did. That's what this is. This is a court filing. It's not very complicated. Just look at this. You're answering questions that any of you could answer. You don't need to hire a lawyer to do this for you, but that's an option that you have. I don't think you need a lawyer to do this for you, okay? I think you could do it just like this guy did, pro se. You file the thing, you answer the questions. You don't have to do something too elaborate. You just kind of describe what's going on. So this form is available online, but of course we make it available to you, and you can download it as a PDF anytime you want. If you want one when you're in prison, we'll send it to you. Okay, because it's pretty simple. And you know, these are tools to advocate for yourself. But you can see this form is not the type of stuff that your lawyer charges you $25,000 to produce. You can produce and answer these questions just as well as anyone else for this type of remedy, right? There's a lot of different types of remedy. Then he writes a memorandum of support. So I'll show you what this means in a more how will I say it, easier to digest format than me speaking to you. We will produce it for you in a booklet like this. We'll send it to you in prison, and you'll be able to read it. And it's almost like a template where you're saying, I just have to answer questions about myself. What am I entitled to? How do I do it? And you will see this, it's like drawing by connecting the dots, right? I mean, I'm not an artist, but I know if I use those connect the dot things, I can end up with a drawing that looks like it's supposed to look. This is not complicated. A judge imposed a sentence. There's going to be a number of factors that influence that sentence. You can see that on our website. If you look at the calculator, what are those complications? Number one, it's going to be, what is the sentence length in months? It's going to be, how much time did you serve in jail, if you served any? It's going to be the day that you surrendered. And it's going to be then just a function of saying, okay, if I surrendered on this day, I have a 36-month sentence or a 37-month sentence. I can get statutory good time off of that. That gets taken off. You add that. If you go through our DAP program, you can get time off for that. And then there's this concept of earned time credits. That's a little more complicated because it determines, first of all, are you a low pattern score or a minimum pattern score? And those are factors that you can't control. There are things like your past and your age, and that's going to change. That may change dynamically. It may not, but it's going to influence how many programs you created and how quickly you can get out of prison And then to get to Cindy's question, how often did your sentence computation get changed? So we want to continue looking at our examples. So that's what this guy did. He filed his motion in court. Once he filed his motion in court, the government filed a response. That's what this looks like. And if you scroll through here, you will see that the government does a pretty good job of giving a procedural history of responding to what they did. And if you keep scrolling down here, through all of this stuff, you're going to see that this is the U.S. attorney responding, but they're always going to back up what they say with affidavits. Here's an affidavit of a case manager in prison who's basically saying, oh, I've worked for the prison for this many years, and this is the way we do things here, and we're always following our policies and procedures, and he's eligible for this information. He went through all these classes, okay? And he's entitled to this much, but we have a process. So Cindy, this is right to your question. The Bureau is in the process of incorporating FTC tracking capabilities into Sentry. And I'm reading number 9, and updating sentencing computations when appropriate. So you're asking me, when do they do it? Here's their answer: when appropriate, okay? The current focus, that's a salient point that I want you to focus on. The current focus. It's not going to be the focus in 6 months, but it is the current focus, is on inmates closest to their release dates. Then the Bureau will move to inmates with later release dates. Central office, remember, big bureaucracy, okay? The central office, the gurus in Washington, D.C., disseminate spreadsheets monthly. And they track people who are within 24 months of their release date. Okay, now, remember what I said, the salient point, Cindy, this is what's happening right now. It's not what's going to happen as this tanker starts to turn more, okay? Because the Bureau of Prisons is creating this computer database that is going to track it monthly, probably daily, okay? Don't take my word for it. We can look at things like, I think I can look at things like here. I can share my screen, and let me see if I can go to a Chrome. Chrome. Share a Chrome site. We can look at a couple of things that I would like you to stay focused on. Where's my, hold on a second, cancel. I lost my Chrome, sorry. Okay, there's Chrome. If I pull this over here, right, here's the calculator. Use this as a tool, just so you know, right? Right now it's still on the block because I'm still developing this calculator, but you can see it, Good Time Calculator. Click on it, play with your release dates, okay? And kind of try to understand this process so that you can figure it out, but also go to the BOP's website, right? I'm gonna go to the BOP's website. Carol, would you give me the number of somebody in prison? I don't care who, somebody, whatever, fine.
75955.
Hold on a sec, find by number, what is it?
75955.
51479, search, okay. I can look for a person here and I can see they've got a release date. Oh shoot, it's got a release date unknown. She must have just got there. But the important thing to see is, what does it say up here? Locate the where was it First Step Act. Okay, due to the First Step Act, sentences are being reviewed and recalculated, right? To address pending federal time credit changes. As a result, an inmate's release date may not be up to date. Website visitors should continue to check back periodically to see if any changes have occurred, okay? I am not giving you nonsense. The Bureau of Prisons is changing it. And by the time, hopefully, you are ready to get out of prison, you will have these updates done. But again, don't take my word for it. I don't want to be this guy that's just sending you this incendiary information that's decimating hope. I want you to be able to see the real information. So let's look at the real information. Am I sharing the right screen? Yes. And that is another one of these declarations. Let's look at this declaration from Susan Giddings. I hereby declare and state the following. I am an employee of this Bureau of Prisons. I work for the Correctional Programs Branch. I've spoken about the CPB in other webinars, okay? They are in the central office in Washington, D.C. She's been there since 1991. What's that telling you? She is an authority figure, okay? As the unit management section chief, I am responsible for correctional systems in the BOP national blah, blah, blah. As such, I work closely with the Office of Research and Evaluation and the Office of Information Technology. As part of my duties, I also have access to BOP files in the Century database. Then she's going to talk about this person. Now, in earlier webinars, I'm going to get back to that, but in earlier webinars, I've told you, you've got to create an advocacy package to make yourself strong in front of the eyes of people you will never meet, you will never sit across the table from, you will never have a conversation with, but they have discretion and authority over your life. So I am not telling you to do these things because I think it's important. I'm not telling you to do these things for any other reason. Said, this is how I won. I won by understanding the system and figuring out how am I going to respond to the system. I won by knowing how to reject the negative information that you get every day in prison and that you have been getting ever since you got wrapped up into this wretched system and attorneys told you one thing and you had to do something else. And you said, wait a minute, how did I get there? The only thing I can promise you is I will never ask you to do something I didn't do. And I will never lie to you. I will show you, hey, if I'm making decisions, it's because I'm going to get information from people like this, subject matter experts, people that are in decision-making authority. What are they doing? What are they looking at? Okay. And she is the one that's telling you this, Cindy, is how they are doing it right now. Okay. Right now, they are saying because it's such a big problem, and you could read this yourself. Okay. I don't got to go through all this, but there were some important takeaways here of what they're doing and why. Okay. And what they're doing right now, I think it's on page 9. Well, it says that on 8, it says the BOP has begun implementing the FSA final rule. What's the final rule? It's what I showed you earlier. This thing here, okay, that was documented in the Federal Register. Everything in the BOP is policy driven. It's not driven by you as an individual. You're just a cog in the machine. I'm number 163777004 in the Bureau of Prisons. I'm not Michael Santos. And so if you understand that, said, okay, how do I grease this machine in such a way that it works on my behalf? She's saying thousands of inmates have already been released to community custody and hundreds more will release soon. But it's also saying that on January the 12th, the BOP established interim procedures. That is a very important word, interim. It's not permanent. What they're doing today is not going to be what they're doing next month. Well, probably next month, but I think I heard October it'll be done. To ensure timely implementation of the FSA final rule, interim procedures were established to prioritize people for immediate benefit in terms of release or pre-release community confinement. Okay, the interim procedure will remain in effect during this initial period and will continue pending the completion of an auto calculation. It will eventually be an auto calculation in real time and full integration into the Century system. But see, the important part of this webinar that goes both to Cindy's and Glenn's information is that the Bureau of Prisons is a massive bureaucracy. The First Step Act is the biggest piece of prison reform legislation in more than 35 years, okay? I just want to say, going back. it's causing a lot of things. If you have to go into the Bureau of Prisons, there's never been a better time than now, because things are going to get better for you. But if we have to advocate for you, you have to be doing the things to help us advocate for you. And that's anticipating what we're going to see, who we're going to have to fight, whether it's a judge or whether it's a BOP administrator. We want you to have the best possible ability to overcome and to win, okay? And to win, you've got to have this CEO mindset. You've got to be thinking today about the problems you're going to face in the future. You got to have your plan, and I've given you a plan. I've shown you how to build this. I can't build it for you. I can't, because I'm not going to be in prison with you. I used to do that with my partner, Justin Paperny. We built our plan together because I was in prison for 20 plus years when I met him, and he was doing a year and he didn't know how to do it. So I said, let's build our plan, and then we could use this as a plan to make a bigger impact on society. But I'm not going to be there with you. Okay, I'm here with you now, and I'm giving you a tool to learn how to do it. But you have to develop your tools, your tactics, and your resources, and you have to hold yourself accountable so that when we go to advocate for you, you got all this stuff done. And that release plan becomes your compass. I've given you links to a sample release plan. I did a webinar on a sample release plan. I've given you a template on how to build it. This is how you build an extraordinary and compelling case, because that's what they have to consider if you're going to try something like, what do you call it? Compassionate release under the First Step Act. Because now, with the law the way that it works today, your judge may sentence you to something, but you can go back to your judge later and say, I'm worthy of getting out earlier because of these things, these changes that have happened since sentencing. You can't be bringing things that he already knew about at sentencing, because you got to be thinking about the other side. And the other side, whether it's a prison system or a U.S. attorney who's going to respond, they're going to say, but Your Honor, you already knew this at sentencing. There's nothing new here. And it's up to you to make assessment and say whether that's right or wrong. I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. I can only show you this is what I did while I was in prison. Now, I know that none of you are serving, long. I know it's a long sentence. If you're serving 90 days, it's a long sentence, but I'm not thinking about in terms of you. I'm thinking about into the environment where you're going. In the environment where you're going, the Bureau of Prisons, in a bureaucracy, if you don't have 10 years, you're a short-term prisoner. That's how they see it, okay? If you don't have 10 years, you're a short-term prisoner. You're not the priority. So if you understand that, you say, okay, I understand the battle I got to fight. How am I going to fight it? I want you to have a good plan. I need you to have a good release plan. I can show you how to do it. I can give you a template how to build it, but I can't build it because I'm not going to be there with you. But I can show you what I would have done. And I can show you, if you get a fight, I can show you how to respond. That's what our team does. And I will never ask you to do anything I didn't do. So I want to just say, is there anything I didn't answer on this webinar that I should have answered? If there are any questions, because I don't see any, we've now come to the end of what I wanted to share with you. Any comments? This is our time to really have that interactive part. And there's nothing you can't ask me. But I will be, if I don't have questions, here's what you can expect next. I will record this video. I will build a web page with all the links on it so that you could access it at your convenience. And, and I know that our team will be available to help you as well along the process. So I don't see any questions. Oh, I do. Arthur, what changes are expected in October? Great question. So when I showed you the Bureau of Prisons website and I showed you release dates, it said on there a paragraph, please check back regularly because these dates change. And as I showed you that declaration from Susan Giddings, who is at the Correctional Programs Division in DC, she said, we're building a new computer model that will calculate these earned time credits automatically, okay? And that's what you can expect by October. That computer system should be done by October. That's what the subject matter expert that I hired for our nonprofit told us. They said that they checked, that's what's coming on. And when that happens, you won't have to do these kind of fights. But I still think this webinar was really important for you because there's going to be more things happening in the Bureau of Prisons. And when you write to our team while you're in prison with these rumors, I want to be able to remind you, hey, do you remember when I was in there and I told you about historically, this is how things happen and this is what's going on. This is one of those examples. This is what we can do. You have to focus on what you can do and not what the machine is doing. Let the machine be the machine, because the machine's going to be the machine. Okay, the machine's it's like Orwellian, right? Big Brother's doing its thing. We've got to succeed anyway, and we're going to help you the best of our ability. But you can help us help you if you have this release plan, if you keep a clean disciplinary infraction, if you pay your FRP requirements, if you have gradual incremental stages. It is going to be easier to help yourself, whatever the mechanism may be. Can you send me the link to the release plan and the templates, please? Cindy, we can definitely do that for you. Please give me until tomorrow to finish building this page with all of the links, but I will send it out. You will see this email that goes out to everybody, and in it will have the link to today's webinar. And on that page, you will see an iTunes recording of this video, a YouTube recording of this video, and then all the supporting documentation so that you can get it. Do all jobs do inside earned time credits or certain programs? These are one of these things, Glenn, that is in development. So today, I can only tell you Unicor is definitely getting earned time credit. Do all jobs get them? I don't want to speak to that because I don't have authority on that. I would have to learn. And it's also not what's happening right now. It's local because you're turning this tanker. You've got a warden in Mississippi making one decision, and you've got a warden in Kentucky making a different decision. And that's what the Bureau of Prisons has to do, is it has to bring all of these policies into a rule, and that rule will show you what qualifies as earned time credits. But it's irrelevant whether the job does or not. You could always participate in a class that qualifies for ETC, and you're going to get them. You can't get more, right? You can only get so much. So if you're at Unicor and you're also an RDAP, you're still only going to get the earned time credits for the month. So just be active in your plan and participate in programs, and you'll get the time credits that you can. Unicor, is that everywhere? No, it's not everywhere, but it's in a lot of places. Unicor, for those of you who don't understand, is a wholly owned government business called Federal Prison Industries, and it's a factory that provides services for other government agencies, whether it's the Postal Service or the military or the General Services Administration or whatever. They make uniforms and desks and computer refurbishing and all kinds of things, and you can get a job there, and that would automatically give you earned time credits for every month that you're there. But that also means it's a scarce resource. So everybody wants to get into Unicor, and you may or may not get in right away, because there may be, as in government, there's always a thing of seniority. So don't worry about Unicor. Just get in there and find programs. Find programs that you could take, and there will always be programs you can take. It doesn't, when I showed you that example, let's look at these programs that the last guy did. I think I can share with you because it's in the document app, Acrobat. Yeah, let me go back to that guy's story here of what programs he did. Is this the government's response? No. Here's the government's response. And you can see, these are the programs that he did that enabled him to earn good time. You can see the names of them. Those are his needs, right? Number 7. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah. Number 7, it says his needs. Well, does he really have these needs? This is not something that a human being makes the decision, but rather it's the pattern score, right? His pattern score is going to identify theoretical triggers in his behavior that turn him into a criminal, right? Everything's a cog in the machine. If the machine says this, oh, he has these needs: anger, hostility, antisocial peers, cognitions, dyslexia, okay, whatever it says here, it's going to say his needs. Actually, he's got, I guess it says he's got no need. Oh, family parenting. Okay. So they're going to say he has these needs, and then they're going to say he should be in these evidence-based recidivism reduction programs or productive activities, including, and then these are the courses right here: managing your diabetes, money smart general population, live healthy with chronic conditions, health and wellness lifespan, brain health as you age, healthier me. I mean, these are really kind of, you know, exercises in mediocrity, which is what the government's all about, right? It's don't pursue excellence, just be mediocre. So you're going to find the courses, just go through the courses. Don't question them. Don't tell us you don't need them. You know, I've given examples in previous webinars of people who've responded that way, and it's only hurt them. Try to remember you're a cog in the machine, do what the machine says, and you're going to get a better outcome. Can we ask when we are looking to be assigned, is an ETC qualified? I would like the template. Yes, Olivia, I'll get you that template. Arthur, can we ask when we are looking to be assigned if it is an ETC qualified one? Yes. Once you get to prison, you know, you're going to find people who look like you, talk like you, want to be your friend, and they're going to help you. And every prison is going to have nice people that are going to welcome you, and they're going to say, okay, here's programs I think you should take. You know, they're going to give you this information, because it's like moving into a local community. You know, you're going to find people that are nice, and they'll tell you what's a good class, and you're just going to take them. It's just, this is a new system, and you just have to ask questions, but you have to know these are possibilities. Otherwise, you miss them. So when you get there, you've got to take this survey, the pattern survey, and that's going to make you eligible for earned time credits, because you're not eligible for earned time credits until you take the survey and they find out, well, what do you need? Okay, you know, you don't need anything. I'm not saying you need anything, but I'm not important. It's the machine. The machine says you got to find the needs. So let's do the needs, and then let's get the classes so we can get our treatment and solve our triggers. Okay, learn to laugh about this. Okay, because you are going into adult daycare, and you've got to be a master at manipulating mediocrity, and that's what you're going to be around. Victoria, hello. Unrelated to today's topic, but in the book, you wrote about how you were interviewing white-collar offenders and to make a book about them. What book is it? Oh, God, I've got a lot of books, Victoria. Here, I'll share. If you go to the Prison Professor's website and you go to the top and you see resources, then you see our books and courses. I write a lot of books. The book you're describing is the book that led to the business that my partner Justice runs, called White Collar Advice. I was writing a book about white collar people because I was going to build a business around that. And then I met Justin before I got out, and we worked on Justin's books and Justin's courses, and that launched on probably the reason we're talking to White Collar Advice. But I have a lot of books where I've interviewed a lot of white collar people, and you know, videos and courses and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's like, I mean, I've written, I don't even know how many books, but a lot of them are in that Prison Professor's course. The main thing I want everybody to understand, and I hope that everybody will understand, is you're in a difficult environment right now, and I get it, and I empathize with you, and our team is amazing. Sam is amazing, and Justin is amazing, and Larry is amazing. And that's why I'm so grateful to be working with them. And maybe you guys will come work with us too at some point. But my role is in the policy side and in the development stuff that we send into prisons to try and change the system. And our team tries to help with, one-on-one or resolving challenges. But we will be with you all the way through until you're done with supervised release, trying to help you help yourself. But I urge everybody to understand we can't subvert the machine or the process and be true to our mission of saying we're here to help you. Because as I showed you in that Dyer case, all it's going to do is hurt you if you try to skip the line of the machine. Okay, it's the machine. So I don't see any more questions. So I'm going to wish you all a great weekend. And I'm going to thank you for being a part of our community. All right, be cool.